Hello and welcome to another video. My name is Lizzie and today we're going to be doing my February wrap-up. February was a really odd reading month for me. I read loads of books. I read some really good books. Some books I very much did not enjoy. I read very few of the books on my TBR. It was altogether just a bit of a mixed match of everything. I did read 10 books in total in February, which, considering that it's the shortest month of the year, is kind of bonkers, although they were all quite short. So, you know, it sort of balances out, I think. And I also took part in polarthon, which was, I think polarthon was the first readathon I ever took part in this time last year. And now I love readathons, so thank you, polarthon. So without any further ado, let's get into the books. The first book I read was a NetGalley arc, and that is Worn by Sophie Thanhauser. This is a non-fiction book and it is all about clothes and fabric and our relationship to clothes. And it was really interesting. It's split into different sections based on the different materials used. So like the first section is linen, there's a section on cotton, there's a section on silks, on synthetics, on wool. And in each section then she kind of takes us through the origins of the use of that particular material for fabric, the economics of it, the social aspect of it, the community and society aspect, and basically the takeaway of the whole book was that the clothing industry is terrible and always has been. There was a little bit of kind of hope at the end when she talks about wool and a lot of the work going on at the moment to sort of encourage wool use and wool production and wool as a sustainable fabric, but most of it was pretty bleak, to be honest, in terms of the human cost and the climate effect of creating all of these fabrics. It really opens your eyes to a lot of things. Even if you feel like you're pretty well informed about fast fashion and all of its problems, then I would really recommend this book because, first of all, you will almost guarantee learn something that you did not know. And I think what I thought was, what really struck me is that, yes, you know, fast fashion as we think of it today is terrible, and the pandemic and the rise of the internet and celebrity culture and all of this is all entangled with it, but that clothing has a long history of being ethically terrible. I could go into more detail about all the sort of finer points of the book, but overall it was a really informative non-fiction book. I think I gave it 4 stars. It sort of felt like there was so much information and she wanted to cram in so much, but also that there were so many things she didn't get to, which is like a kind of weird balance. But apart from that, I really enjoyed it. And I believe there is an abridged version on BBC Sounds if you did want to kind of listen to it instead of read it and get the kind of main points from that one. Next up, it was time for polarthon, and the first book I read was Journey to the Centre of the Earth by Jules Verne. Now, I did do a dedicated polarthon reading vlog, so I will sort of talk briefly about all the books here and link to that in the description. But overall, I really enjoyed this. I haven't read very much of Jules Verne's books, but I've enjoyed what I have read. He writes a great adventure, very sort of gripping stories and very kind of fantastical, imagination-driven things. I did really enjoy this one. It was, I think, probably compared to his other books, the scientific basis has changed a lot, in that you read it and you're like, yeah, this is very different from what we now understand about what is underneath the Earth's surface. But I did enjoy it nonetheless. I had a great time. So yeah. Then I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is a magical realism story about a coffee shop in Tokyo where if you come in and you sit in a certain seat, you can travel through time and talk to someone who has been to that coffee shop before, in the past, or in one case, in the future. And I was so excited for this book because it's very, very popular, very universally beloved book, and it just didn't quite do it for me. I don't know what it was exactly. It was originally written as a play, and I think it would have worked. I think I would have enjoyed it more as a play. But I mean, on the whole, it was enjoyable. It just it didn't really go anywhere for me. And then at the very end, it went a long way, if that makes sense. Like, it was kind of trundling along at the same speed, and then it was like, oh, well, okay, we're going to go, slam loads of things at the very end. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I gave it 3 stars. Bit of a letdown for me, unfortunately. But that was Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Then a very short one, because it's a readathon, so, short books are the way forward. And it was a poetry collection, Running Upon the Wires by K. Tempest. And as you can see by all the tabs, there were lots of things I wanted to return to, lots of things I enjoyed. This is the first of their poetry that I've read, and I loved it. I'm obsessed, and I need to read everything else they've ever written. Now, please and thank you. I really love when poetry collections have a narrative, and this one did. It was about the ending of one relationship, the kind of healing process, and then the beginning of the next relationship. And it was structured like end, middle, beginning, which I thought was a really cool way of structuring it. The poems were beautiful. There are so many lines that I have highlighted and, as you can see, tabbed, that I want to revisit again and again. So this is my first poetry collection of 2022, and it did not disappoint. Then I read The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, and I did not enjoy this book. It's a very popular book. I thought I would love it. I just didn't. I just couldn't connect to it. The writing was beautiful, but I just couldn't connect to the characters or the story or anything. It just felt very kind of arm's length, I could sort of enjoy the lyrical writing style, but I couldn't get past that. It was a bit of a strange one. So it was a bit of another disappointment for me, this one. Didn't really live up to my expectations, unfortunately. So sorry to anyone for whom that is your favourite book. Usually I love sort of fairy tale retellings, fairy tale inspired things. I think the fairy tale style writing was what, it can go one of 2 ways. And it did not go the right way for me this time. I liked the writing in and of itself, but it wasn't the way for me to experience that story. I finished off Polarthon by rereading one of my favourite books of all time, and that is Wintersmith by Terry Pratchett. I read this in one sitting. It's so glorious. I love it so much. It's amazing. Wintersmith is part of the Discworld series and follows Tiffany Aching, a young witch in training. This is the 3rd Tiffany Aching book. And so I think in this book she's 13, and the story starts with the premise of having a dark Morris. So in the UK we have, or specifically, I think it's a specifically English tradition, Morris dancers who mark the beginning of spring, or the sort of turning point of winter into summer. So in true Discworld fashion, then there is of course a dark Morris, because you need balance in the world, and the dark Morris takes you from summer to winter. And Tiffany interrupts the dark Morris. She joins the dancers, and the spirit of winter, the wintersmith, accidentally kind of falls in love with her, and she has to stop him from plunging the whole country, everything, world into eternal winter to show his devotion. This is one of those stories that I've read it so many times. I do not even know how many times I've read this book, but every time I read it I get something more from it. I see more layers to it, more depth, more jokes as well. If you haven't read the book, it's really annoying when people do this, but there's a sticks joke, as in it's a pun on sticks, as in a wooden stick, and sticks as in the river Styx. That's 10 out of 10. Top tier pun that, 10-year-old or 11-year-old, however old I was when this book came out, mythology green me did not get that pun, but now I do, and I appreciate it greatly. And it is one that, revisiting as an adult, I get something completely different out of the story, and I loved it just as much as I always have. The next book I read, I still can't believe I have this book. I can't believe I have it. It's Gallant by V.E. Schwab. This is an advanced copy sent to me by the publishers. I did a dedicated reading vlog specifically for this book, which I will also link in the description. So a brief overview here. This is a sort of gothic ghostly story about Olivia, a teenage girl who has mutism, and she is at a boarding school. She's never met her parents. She doesn't know anything about her parents or her family. And one day she gets a letter inviting her to Gallant, her family estate. And when she gets there, things aren't all as they seem. And the ghouls that she has been able to see her whole life take on a slightly different meaning for her in Gallant. This book was incredible. V.E. Schwab can write literally anything. I loved it so much. And there's also beautiful artwork inside, which really sort of added to the story. I loved the artwork inside. It was a very sort of simple plot and premise, but so well executed because it's V.E. Schwab. That's what we expect. Then I read The House of Little Sisters by Eva Wong-Nava. I read this for a book tour and I really enjoyed it. This is a historical fiction set in the 1930s in what is now Singapore, and follows a main character who is an indentured servant at a very rich household. It's set at a kind of pivotal moment in the politics in British Malay, in that it is just as these indentured servant girls were basically sort of being freed and the law was being changed to protect them, and the main character, she gets involved with that process. What I really enjoyed about this book, it's the same thing I enjoyed with The Girl with the Louding Voice, is it was the perfect balance of like individual empowerment and systemic change for women and for oppressed people. And we love intersectional feminism here on this channel, and this book delivered. Perfect for International Women's Day next week if you are looking for some stories about women from other countries, cultures other than your own. If you are from Europe or a Western country such as myself, then this is one I would really recommend to expand your horizons and read about something you probably haven't heard of before. Speaking of intersectional feminism, Your Silence Will Not Protect You by Audre Lorde. This is, I think it's the first time her work has been published in like a collection in the UK. I may be misremembering that. Either way, it's a collection of Audre Lorde's most famous essays and poems, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I'd read so many books and so many collections, essay collections, where people had said time and time again, you must read Audre Lorde. You must read what she has to say. And I'm so glad I did. What a writer, what a woman, what a mind she has. It's incredible. It's incredible. This is a must read for anyone interested in feminism, in equality, which we all should be. This is a must read for everyone. Everyone should read it. I don't make the rules. You should all read this book. Or any collection of her work. What I really liked is it wasn't too dense. There was only one. It was an interview, I think. I think it's because it was an interview. That was the one that was like a slog to get through. But the rest of them are so readable because most of them were written as speeches or for kind of, they're not academic texts, you know? They're for wide consumption. So amazing, amazing, amazing. And the final book I read this month was Catherine of Aragon, Henry's True Queen by Giles Tremlett. I read this for my Tudor challenge, where I'm setting myself a challenge to read a book off my Tudor shelf every month this year. And this is a biography about Catherine of Aragon. I really enjoyed this as it started out. Most stories of Catherine of Aragon begin with her arriving in England. She's Henry VIII's first wife and was originally married to his brother, and then they were married for ages, and then Anne Boleyn came on the scene, and we all know what happens. I liked that this included her childhood, her life before she came to England. As it went on, I got the sense that I felt like he was going through the motions a bit as we got to the King's Great Matter of Catherine of Aragon versus Anne Boleyn, that it was very sort of like, yeah, you know this, I know this, let's just go through it anyway. And as a result, I felt like we didn't really get much of a sense of her character, or even sort of the space where her character would be, if that makes any sense, which I don't think it does. For comparison, last year I read a biography of Catherine Howard, who is probably the least known about in terms of historical documents of all of Henry VIII's wives, and that still managed to give us like a sense of who she was from the evidence that was available. And this just kind of didn't really connect with me on that. But there were a lot of things in there that I didn't know, or were sort of fresh perspectives. So I did really enjoy this overall, and I gave it 4 stars. So there we go, all the books I read in February. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books, what you thought, and which books you read in February. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. Ta-ra for now.